Welcome to The Difference. I'm Steve Castile, and today Anthony and I are going to be talking to one of his students who has found himself on a journey he probably never anticipated. So stay tuned.
You are listening to The Difference, a program from The Hour, time that makes the difference. I'm Anthony Thaxton, and we are excited. We are coming to you live from the, not live, but live to tape on the Institute. Live on tape.
There we go.
For the Institute for Southern Storytelling at Mississippi College. So we're here on the campus of the Gore Arts Complex, and Steve, we're glad to have you here.
Well, I'm glad to be here. I love coming here. This is a cool studio, and if none of y'all have been here, then make an appointment and come and visit it. It is an incredible kind of frontier of creativity. It's Anthony's own little Imagineering studio.
That's what I'm talking about.
He and Amy make magic happen here every single day.
Every day.
And today the magic is a conversation with one of you guys interns. And Anthony, I want you to introduce JT and tell us a little bit about.
Well, JT, and he's done a field study with us. So Jack Thomas Spears is an honors college senior here at Mississippi College, so he's graduating. He's been involved in a Delta Scholars program, and he's had a couple of trips up to Harvard University. And his last trip, he presented his documentary film that he created with us over this past year, and we are so excited. I'll let Jack Thomas tell you in a minute, about how he approached us and everything. But I will say this. He was a biology major, and he comes to us after an event we did and basically says, I would like to do a film with you guys. And I said, have you done a film before? Well, no. Do you know how to edit? Well, no. Okay. But he did have a drone. And I said, okay. And he seemed like a reasonably intelligent guy. And I noticed he came to several events that we had done. So we said, well, come talk to us. And I'll let him tell you about his project and everything. But it turned into this wonderful relationship, and he was able to come and do a documentary film with us, a 26-minute documentary film. And so he got 3 hours of field study credit, and this was part of his honors college thesis and program that they do. And we are just so proud of what he's done, but it's that continuation here. For me, my story has been that, Sam Gore called me, and I had gone to 3 days of school at another university, and Dr. Gore called and said, I think God wants you at Mississippi College. And I said, well, sir, that ship has sailed. I'm already in school somewhere else. And he said, but I think God wants you here. So I want you to skip school tomorrow and come to Mississippi College and visit, because I think you're supposed to be here. I did. It changed my life. He became my mentor. I'm looking at his desk that is in part of our facility. I wore a bow tie of his to the Emmy Awards when we accepted the Southeast Emmy there for Walter Anderson. And Dr. Gore just became this mentor. He taught at MC for about 65 years and just changed so many lives. And now this campus is named for him. And back to JT, full circle for me, I'm back on this campus and helping carry on that mindset. And every day when I'm driving over here, I think about Sam Gore and the encouragement he poured into me and the opportunities he gave to me, and that helps me as I'm driving over here and saying, gosh, I got to work with JT again and all of this. But I got to come over, and the opportunity to partner with young students like this as they want to tell their stories, and I'm just so thankful for that. And I think Dr. Gore is looking down and smiling, and that continual, that generosity that pays forward, and I think that is time well spent. So with all of that, I just, a fine young man, we're so glad to have him. So Jack Thomas Spears, welcome to the program.
Yeah, thank y'all for having me today. I feel quite honored to be here and to be able to talk.
We just heard Anthony's
rambling introduction.
side of how he met you. Talk to us a little bit about how this project kind of began to be conceived and the inception of it.
And what the project is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So, like he described, this is my Mississippi College Honors College thesis project, and that's the capstone senior project. It takes 3 semesters to complete. And this project started, like he said, at the Delta Scholars Program, which is a program that Mississippi State University instituted through their own honors college. And what the program focuses around is taking young college talent and implementing that in communities to create change. And so their biggest ideal for us was the Mississippi Delta. And so we did a 2-week immersive experience, 1 week in the Mississippi Delta, where we traveled around, we saw nonprofits, we worked with community leaders, we heard from social workers in the area, we went to medical clinics, and it was this great expansion of perspective of this place that I'm from, of my home.
Because you were born in Greenville, correct?
Right. I was born in Greenville, Mississippi. And the backstory to that are that my 2 grandparents on my mother's side immigrated from Canton, China in 1969 to New York City, and then were a part of what they call the Second Great Migration within history of Chinese Americans immigrating to the South. And so that's Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama. And my grandparents were a part of that. They immigrated down to the Mississippi Delta after they were kicked out by a disgruntled landlord in New York. And they opened and ran a small corner market grocery store in Greenville, Mississippi, on the corner of East Clay Street and 82. And you have to remember that these are a people that didn't know how to speak the language. They didn't know the culture. And they thrived here. And they thrived in the Mississippi Delta. They would often call the Mississippi Delta the Golden Mountain.
Wow.
Because of its warmth that it held both within climate, but also the warmth of the culture and the Southern hospitality that they came in contact with each and every day. And one of their favorite aspects, and I think this goes deeply into the topic of place and how place defines identity, but they loved the way that the Mississippi Delta soil would actually grow their native crops from China. And so there was a large Chinese population in the Mississippi Delta at this time, and they were able to have a community garden growing beside the store that they got to share with the entire community. And so you see that time and time again through the Mississippi Delta. And I was born in the Delta. My mom was born in the Delta.
And your mom, all right, so his mom is a fireball. I mean, she's great, and she came here to the studio to be interviewed. But what's so funny is, with being of Chinese descent, so when she starts talking, this voice that she has, she said, "Y'all, I just love it in the Delta," and you're like, the voice doesn't quite go with the person in front of you,
Right?
And I think that maybe has had people baffled for years. And she said, "Y'all, we're not all from over there." I loved meeting his mom, but that mixture of that hospitality in the Delta and that mixture of the heritage was just fascinating to me. So your mom actually worked in the store, correct?
She did. So she grew up working in the store. And the best imagery that I can paint for you from my mom is that you could imagine a porcelain china doll. And when she opens her mouth, Mississippi falls out. And that's just the truth of the matter. I think she's got the deepest draw in all of my family. I mean, it's beautiful. It's beautiful to hear her speak. And
It is.
So for you to return to the Delta and go back to your roots through this project you were in, what were some of the biggest ahas that began to, I mean, it's one thing to grow up, but once you come back and see it with different eyes, what really struck you?
Well, one thing that deeply struck me is that our family, I felt like, had created a false narrative about the Mississippi Delta. Not completely false, but they had taken a single narrative and then painted that across the Delta. And that was that the Delta was a place of destitution, that the Delta was a place that we moved from because of crime and lack of economic opportunity.
And the store closing created a food desert in that area.
Right. So my grandparents exchanged hands with the store, and then it later closed. My family moved out of the Mississippi Delta when I was 3 or 4. So it's interesting because I remember being 8, 9, 10, and we would drive through the Mississippi Delta and we would go see these places that I felt so connected to. And I couldn't describe it. There was this pull almost within my soul. And it was because that's where my family had set down roots and been created, right? That was where the growth, that's where they were rooted. And I remember very specifically driving out to Yazoo Wildlife in the Mississippi Delta. And we pull up to one of the old wooden signs that they have out there. And for the people that have been there, they know what I'm talking about. And we pull up, and it's an old faded sign and a glass case with signs in it that talk about, hunter safety and wearing orange and what to do. And we pull up, and we're in my dad's 1998 Nissan Maxima. Little kids riding in the back seat. And I've been staring down cornrows all the way there. And we pull up, and we get out, and he starts telling us about this place that he used to hunt. And this place that he loved, and he grew up, in his early adult life, spent a lot of time in Yazoo Wildlife hunting. And I just remember pulling one of the car permit tags out of the old rusted box right there beside the wooden sign, and it's faded, that faded orange color. And it made me cry driving back. And I couldn't describe it, and still to this day I can't fully describe the feeling that I had there. But I think for the first time in my life I'd realized that I'd been pulled from this place, like I said earlier, that my family had been so rooted in. So, moving forward, I go to Mississippi State Delta Scholars. I do the program. And what really struck me more than anything is, yes, poverty in the Delta is a reality. And yes, people doing the work in the Delta is a reality. And yes, communities are resilient. And yes, there are people caring for people. And it's one of the easiest pictures for me of the hands and feet of Jesus. I mean, everywhere you go, each community after community, you see it. Because there are people, Mississippians, helping other Mississippians over and over and over again. And in that program, we're tasked with a project. So that's where the documentary is born, because I realized in my self-reflection that seeing the hands and feet of Jesus, not seeing the poverty, not seeing the destitution, not seeing the degradation. It was seeing the hands and feet of Jesus that gave me the want to also be part of that hands and feet. And then within that, I realized that these people didn't have time to get their voices out. Right? Understandably so. They're feeding people, they're putting clothes on the backs of people, they're caring for their communities. They don't have a lot of time to run a social media page or create a documentary of their own. So that's when I found the gap. And that was where I knew that I could bridge the gap between the people who are doing the work in the Mississippi Delta and those that haven't heard it and haven't seen it.
And the beauty of it for me is that you tell the story of the conditions in the Delta and the unbelievable challenge that is there, because it is a different place. You tell that story through the eyes of basically, about 6 different organizations that are helping hands, so that's the name of the documentary, Helping Hands.
Right.
And you're telling through those 6 viewpoints, and those are the people we hear from. We're not hearing from a poor sharecropper or something. I mean, we're hearing from the people who are there helping. So tell us briefly the 6 organizations so you had Ralph Eubanks, you had Robert St. John, you've got Jason Coker. I mean, you've got great people that you interviewed. Tell us about the organizations.
Right. So the organizations are kind of diverse in nature. So I interviewed Linda Keys, who runs Mississippi Coats for Kids, and her nonprofit primarily focuses on putting coats on the back of school children in the Mississippi Delta.
And how many? 100,000?
100,000 coats in their first year of operation.
Wow.
And so she's gotten sponsorships from Nike because they have now since moved from just coats to also giving out caps and gloves and shoes to kids that need them in the Delta. And so they have sponsorships from Nike, and she's doing some amazing things. She's in 48 of the 82 counties in Mississippi, and I think she can do it, but her goal is to be in all 82 counties in Mississippi before she moves on.
Cool.
And she's just so passionate about it. Like you mentioned, Robert St. John with Extra Table and the idea of actual healthy food in a community and what that can do. I interviewed John Coleman at the Alcorn State Extension Farm, who's teaching his community how to farm an acre of land. And not just how to farm an acre of land, but he's creating a co-op. So one person has a tractor. Well, that person doesn't have a disc for their tractor.
Right.
Well, another person that comes to his farm has a disc. So they get the guy with the tractor and the guy with the disc, and they hook them together. You know, he's got seed distribution.
And I will say this, that John, and I love Robert, and I love all Ralph Eubanks. I love all these guys. John is my favorite in the film because John, I mean, he starts preaching. He's saying that it's all about LOVE and love, and also talks about green-eyed purple whole peas. So he is my absolute favorite, but he gives a character. I mean, he is a personality, but he talks about how can you not hear the sounds of the cows and the pigs and not just say, this is wonderful. Look at where we are, what a privilege it is to be here in the Delta helping people.
Right.
It's just fascinating. So you captured that one. I'm sorry I interrupted you.
No, you're good. I mean, and he is just such an image of a person from the Delta being able to tell a story. And I think he aptly is many people's favorite within the film. And you're right, he did preach. And we were about 25 minutes into his interview. And I said, John, you've just been preaching to me. And he said, oh, son, I haven't been preaching yet.
You know, and you saying that, whenever I was at the conference office over our outreach, and there were several nonprofits that were there, is when the Kellogg Foundation withdrew all their funding from the Delta. And they had spent about $500 million over a decade and said, we can't see the needle move in poverty. And part of the reason is just because what was happening there was a grafted in kind of help, not an organic kind of help, where the people who were there had their roots there and knew their neighbors and knew a way to live within that cultural framework and get the things done that needed to be done.
Absolutely. And if you were to ask me right now, what's the one way that we can help the Mississippi Delta, I would tell you to empower those who are already doing the work, to empower the helping hands.
Yeah.
Right. Because they're the ones, like you said, they're ingrained in their community and they're doing the work. And going back to what John Coleman said in Genesis 1, and God said it was good. So why can't we look at this place and say, it is good?
Yeah.
We've taken it away from the Delta. We've taken the ability of the Mississippi Delta to be good. We've taken that away from them.
And it's, you know, they get labeled as our own third world country. And yet when you look across there culturally, the music that just, I grew up in Greenwood we moved there when I was in the first grade and stayed there through the fourth grade, middle of the fourth grade. And we were in the 60s, and it was just a very tumultuous time. And yet the school I went to, the neighborhood I lived in, I have so many memories of just, you know, loving my life. And the sense of when you were so brilliant in your opening kind of remarks of holding the juxtaposition of it's terrible and it's wonderful. They're not paradoxical. They're just so intertwined.
Right.
And it's like seasons. There's winter and there's summer. There's spring and there's fall. And in that culture, there's this just intrinsic tension that they live in every day.
Absolutely. It's two sides to the same coin. The coin is the Delta.
Right.
And the heads is the bad and the tails is the good.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's reasonable to focus just on one side without being able to see the other.
Right.
You can't do it. It's not plausible to look at it from that way.
And it changes nothing if you don't look at both sides. I mean, it really won't.
Right.
You know, Jason Coker. So we were talking about the different organizations. You know, and Jason. After the film premiere the other night, he was talking. He said, "I thought I would just have a comment or two in there." I said, "Jason, you became the star of the show." You know, he had so many good comments, but he's again the idea that you can't pull yourself up by your bootstraps if you don't have boots. You know, that kind of idea of, you know, we have billionaires, but we have starving children, and it's a challenge. It is a challenge, and our show is called The Difference, so it's all about being different. It's being a Christ follower, being the hands and feet of Jesus, but loving God, loving others. And all of that requires and demands that we pay attention and not just, okay, everything's fine here in Clinton or fine here in Madison. Everything's fine in Oxford. But all this area in between and to the west of us here, you know, we have some challenges. So the other organizations that are helping to try to do something about that, briefly tell about that. And I don't know if you have time for joining us next week too, because you know we're getting close to the end of this program. But finish telling us about those because I want to hear more about your personal story.
Exactly.
Right. Absolutely. And I'd love to stick around, do a 2-part series, come back next week. But we interviewed Jason Coker with Together for Hope, and he runs an umbrella nonprofit that has many facets. It has a facet in the Mississippi Delta. It's got a facet in the Alabama Black Belt. It's got a facet in the Appalachian Mountains of West Virginia. And they do a beautiful type of community-based asset mapping where they go in and they don't ask what do you need, but they ask what do you have. And he has figured out a way to grow tomatoes in the Mississippi Delta and send them to a manufacturing plant in the Appalachian Mountains, and has created economy and has created jobs, and he's created structure for these people. I also interviewed Chiquita Fountain, who's with Delta Hands for Hope in Shaw, Mississippi. I interviewed my mom, right, as a native voice, and
Ralph
Eubanks is a well-renowned writer about the Mississippi Delta and is currently working on a new book that will soon to be coming out.
About the Delta, Steve.
Right.
So it's going to be an important book. And the funny thing is, JT came to us one day and he said, can I use the studio for an interview? I said, sure. And I'm like smiling, you know, who's he got lined up for an interview? And he said, Ralph Eubanks, and he's going to be here on such and such a day. And not only had he the idea of, or even knowing who Ralph Eubanks was, but not even saying, well, maybe I can get him. He had already contacted him, had conversations, convinced Ralph to come here to Clinton. And that's the kind of student that Jack Thomas has been, and we have just been delighted with watching his development and seeing this come to pass. Now, I want to tell everybody, because we are going to get JT to come back next week, and we're going to continue this conversation. But if you would like to see his film, right now, we have it housed at our Institute for Southern Storytelling site. You can go to our site and click on the video archives and check out his documentary here. We have hopes for sharing it on broadcast and in other venues, and at some point JT will have it on his YouTube channel. But for now, go to southernstorytelling.mc.edu. That's southernstorytelling.mc.edu, and you can find his documentary there. And we would love for you to see it, and we'd love for you to be back next week to hear more about Jack Thomas Spears and his story.
Exactly. You know, as we've spent the last 2 weeks, what we've been talking about is the places God takes us and teaches stuff we never thought we were going to learn. And it just sounds like, you know, the journey God's had you on has not only allowed you to meet some people that have just stirred your soul, but it's also, I mean,
you did a film.
The day I walked in when you and Anthony were previewing and beginning the editing process, and as I watched one of the interviews, I was just struck of just, there was such an authenticity to your engagement of this. This wasn't just a project. It was a life-changing event. It made a difference in you. And I immediately told Anthony, I said, we've got to do an interview with JT about what's happened. So we invite
and
y'all
I
to come back.
reluctantly agreed and said, okay, if we have to. If we have
Yeah, I'll bill you later.
One more thing. So we want to thank you guys for tuning in today, and just invite you to think about your own life. What kind of journeys has God taken you on, or maybe calling you to, and you've been afraid to kind of engage? Next week, we're going to hear some more about what God did in JT's life to really make a difference. So, as always, thanks for listening, and live loved.
You've been listening to The Difference, a presentation of The Hour. The Difference is made in conjunction with and partnership with the Institute for Southern Storytelling at Mississippi College. To find out more about the Institute and ways that we are partnering and mentoring young lives through storytelling, filmmaking, and more, visit us at southernstorytelling.mc.edu. And for more resources from The Hour and from The Difference, check us out at our Hour Stream platform with the streaming content at thehour.org. I'm Anthony Thaxton. Thanks for joining.